It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! It's Feedback Friday. And even that made me feel a little nauseous right now. I've lost track of how many days of Passover it's been, but I'm not feeling well. God, you can see it in my skin. Oh God, I don't do well with Passover food. I don't know why I do this to myself. I really tried to avoid as much matzah this year, but last couple days I broke down because it's just quick and now I feel so bad. So if you enjoy watching me, no, I'll hold on with the Patreon thing. I wrote some notes for this episode, especially on the 6 Days in Fallujah feedback. So if it seems more scripted and less authentic than it normally does, that's why, because I'm really not feeling well. If you enjoy watching me suffer or just appreciate the work ethic or for any other reason, I can really use a support. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. I'm going to do the response I want to deal with the free speech video, because this is something I know I have to figure out how to just stop it from sticking in my craw. I get really annoyed by the idea that free speech means you should just be able to say whatever you want. There shouldn't be any pressure on you any way or another. That's free speech. Anything less than that, you're not free. That's just not the world. It never will be the world. There are always pressures. There are always considerations. I don't know where to even begin with people who think that way. And the thing is, I don't think these people are just being trolls. I think they actually believe that speech should be completely without consequence because that is freedom. There is no such thing as freedom from consequence. Now, the consequences of something does not make that thing inherently immoral. That's going to be my first comment with the 6 Days in Fallujah thing. It touches on that. But this idea that there has to be, like, I don't know why people think it'll be some sort of paradise when everyone is just running around not giving any consideration to what they say before they open their mouth. That's modern US politics, right? That's what's happening right now. That's what's happening on social media. That's what's happening in the world right now, is people are just spouting off about stuff and not really thinking really about how it affects actual human beings. And I'm sorry, when you do that, you're showing you don't have the appropriate level of responsibility to hold power, period, end of story. Moving on to the 6 Days in Fallujah thing, because this ties in, right? Like, we should be, according to this theory that people should just, say anything they want, damn the torpedoes. We're not allowed to object to these people dehumanizing U.S. servicemen and women over a stupid petition over a video game. And it's not the petition. I really don't think they're going to get anywhere with this. That, again, sticks in my craw. It's the fact that these people who are all the poor suffering Iraqis, right? They're dehumanizing armed services personnel. And it was like one of these things that, you sometimes feel the universe is kind of spying on you, because I was making Passover food. I think it was second night of Passover, one of those two. But Tammy Duckworth was on Chris Hayes' show on MSNBC, but Mehdi Hassan was hosting. And Mehdi Hassan was asking some pretty leading questions about Tammy Duckworth's military service. She served in Iraq, lost both her legs. Tammy Duckworth is a badass in the U.S. government. Senator? Yes, senator. And she was there promoting a book, and he clearly hadn't read it. And she said, if you read my book, you'll read the part where I talk about the fact that I didn't agree with the war in Iraq. I still felt the need to serve my country because that's what service is. When you're in the military, you don't get to pick where you're deployed. That's gotten lost on the left for some odd reason. The extreme left. I'm at the point where we need new names for these political extremes. Because left wing and right wing, they don't work anymore. Being anti-war, yeah, that was a left wing thing, but it's now being anti-soldier, right? And it's this weird horseshoe effect where both the extreme right and both the extreme left just think, don't get involved in anything. Let the whole world go to hell. We'll be fine. Really. That hasn't worked historically. But let's get into that content because I'm feeling sick and I'm losing my train of thought. But yeah, I'm really struggling with this idea of left wing, right wing. It doesn't suit anymore. But Maloon Tarka got into that ethical thing I was talking about. There can be a debate on what protections should be rights. There's quite a few we can agree on, but a number that are hotly debated even today, and we certainly wouldn't agree with past cultures on which rights should be rights. What about the divine right of kings? Imagine what we would consider rights in the future. Access to a mobile phone and internet are considered by many to be rights in modern industrial countries with quite good reasons. There are deontological ethical systems which use rights as moral standards, but in a practical legal sense, rights are just limitations on and obligations for governments in relation to individuals. You can argue from a consequentialist point of view that not having those rights has led to bad consequence by letting governments do things without legal repercussions. There's more to the comment, but that's the point I want to deal with. I'm not big on consequentialist ethics. I understand that when you're drafting legislation, you have to try to see down the road. But I have a different approach to it. I think there's ethics and then there's strategizing. And strategizing, like drafting legislation, is what you do after you've established your ethical framework. It's not what you do to establish your ethical framework. One, it's very difficult to predict outcomes outside of broad strokes. So you have to do things because they're right, and you have to avoid doing things because they're wrong. Not about what outcome do I want. That's strategizing within your pre-existing moral framework, right? You can't go, I'm going to set my moral framework based on the outcome I want. That's not really morality. That's situational morality. I mean, for me, an example, I might be much more financially secure if I just kept my mouth shut or gave lip service to the right things over the last 5 years, just took an extremist view one way or another, because that's how to be right these days. You staunchly adhere to one of the camps throwing out money one way or another and give up all your free will and all your critical thinking, right? But you know what? Maybe not too. Like, there's a lot of people out there that try that and don't succeed. And that's the problem, that consequentialism is to some extent just magical thinking, because there's, in life, again, that's not life. There's no way to control variables so tightly that you can really predict the outcome beyond a few broad strokes. I mean, so many times I'm going to take so much shit for that, and then very little happens. And then other times I'm like, oh, nobody have a problem with this. Blah! Right? Like the whole Mortal Kombat thing. More on that in a bit. And, you know, to my way of thought, something doesn't become less wrong because you got away with it, right? And something doesn't become less right because nobody gave you credit for it. There's right and there's wrong, and I do the right thing for me, and I avoid the wrong thing for me, not because of some sort of Pavlovian conditioning where I think I'm going to get something for doing these things. That's a great way to make yourself miserable. It's actually scientific fact that if you need a reward for everything to feel any sense of worth, it actually makes you more, less happy over time, more like depressed over time. People need purpose. People need purpose. And this is kind of an interesting segue, but there were quite a few comments to the progressive stack in this video. And I don't talk about the progressive stack much. And I realize maybe that's an oversight, but I don't like the progressive stack. I don't like validating the progressive stack by talking about it. Because here's what I think about the progressive stack. Any group that needs a system because they can't look at that group and go, we have way too many of one type of whatever, speaker, member, decision maker, whatever. If you can't just look and go, yeah, this is really unbalanced, you've got a far bigger problem than any oversimplified system like the progressive stack can solve. Okay? Period. End of story. And you guys know this is something that drives me crazy about video games, right? And video game journalism and stuff. We need more diversity in games. Well, look at your own staff. Still all a bunch of white dudes. Oh, you've got a few gay guys in there. Oh, wow, that's diverse. You know? Easy to say, not that hard to do, really, unless you've got some sort of deeply ingrained racist view that you don't want to look at. This shit is not hard, right? It's not hard. Look around. Does it look too samey? Well, maybe we've got some problem with our sorting or what kind of self-selection we're encouraging or what. Like, look into it, right? Now, this is not always a problem if it is, say, a group specifically for, you know, men or women or people of a certain culture. Like, you know, obviously there's a sorting. That's the purpose of the group, right? But we're not talking about that. We're talking about situations where exclusions are happening that aren't like part of the inherent nature of the group, right? This shit's not hard. It's sometimes very time consuming and sometimes very irritating because you just can't find anybody. And that ends up being a problem of you're not promoting things in the right place. And those sorts of pipelines are a big problem in gaming. But you never hear people talking about pipeline problems. No, it's progressive stack shit. And the thing that chills me about the whole thing, and I look at this, and the thing that keeps coming to mind, this is going to be a lot of what disturbs Leanna, this video, I realize now. Maybe it's because I'm queasy. But what does it say that so many white leftists think everyone needs this kind of system to, you know, help them sort people because they can't recognize we don't have enough different kinds of people giving us ideas? Could it possibly be that the ideology that drives this certain subsection of the left does lend itself inherently to a certain homogeny of thinking? And because that thinking was developed historically by white pseudo-intellectuals, the belief system has inherently marginalized everybody else. And that's why you have trouble getting people. I mean, the extreme left, different story. Like, no confusion. The extreme right, no confusion why, they don't want it. right? If somebody like Candace Owens shows up and say, hey, great, we'll trot her out like a prize pony. But the hard left seems strangely not diverse for what they claim to want. And that's not so when you look at moderately progressive groups. The difference is stark. And even mildly conservative, like what we call red Tory groups up here, you see a lot more brown people in Canadian conservative circles than you see in like hardcore American left-wing circles. And that's weird. And yet at the same time, it's not when you drill down. So enough about that. But that's just why I don't use it. The whole thing freaks me out. I'm just admitting that because I realized I haven't talked about it. On that note, Oran Dark Lord left a comment basically saying that how many boxes it ticks, the petition against 6 Days in Fallujah. He says, I strongly suspect that this is the work of a master troll dangling a bait in front of the woke crowd and seeing how many of them are so angry that they go full mask off totalitarian. And the answer apparently is a lot of them, including prominent people. 11,000 and counting when I started making this video. And I admit I included Oren's comment because I had moments when I was looking over that petition and I thought, this has got to be a troll. It's definitely a Poe's Law situation that you can't tell satire of an extreme view from the extreme view itself. And I've been having this problem a lot lately. This crystallized this for me. I'm having a lot of trouble deciding what to talk about on this channel because I am having increasing trouble taking this stuff seriously. Then I start wondering, is this a troll? And am I getting sucked in? And my brain kind of shuts down to protect itself from the insanity. There are other things I want to use my bandwidth for. But people are interested in this stuff and they legitimately get upset by this stuff. And it makes me feel so awful that people are hurting this much over stuff that I'm like, why does this matter? This just seems so petty, right? The other side of that is, and I admit this has really been wearing me down lately. I can only take so many topics where people are going to scream at me no matter what I say. That's just a human thing, right? I'm not one of those people that wants outrage clicks, right? There are some people that are, and I get that, again, YouTube's kind of trained people into that assumption. But I gotta say, mentioning The Last of Us 2 always breeds toxicity. I'm just so angry at that game, I can't stop myself. And there were some comments that legitimately like, yikes, in response to me. I looked up her name. Her name is Nora, the black lady that gets killed in The Last of Us 2. Shows how much an impact she made otherwise, that I thought her name was Nadine. The fact that I said I was bothered and I got people saying, why you got to make it about race? Like, I wasn't making it about race. This was a legitimate reaction I had. It wasn't conscious. It wasn't something I talked myself into. I was viscerally disturbed. Like, it stayed with me. And this, I actually think, instead of just dismissing these comments of, oh, they're racist, mocking tone intentional, because I really think this is why we can't make progress. It's like people have been induced into that who maybe before, 5 to 7 years ago weren't so jumpy about that stuff. Some people are. I have heard that shit my entire life. It's always bothered me, but it's coming from some places that have been surprising to me. And I really do think that, yes, racism exists. Yes. But I also think that this, tradition of hot take writing has turned this stuff into such performance art that people like me who are legitimately disturbed get either lumped in with the performance art or drowned out by the performance art. And then, you get the opposite thing happening when someone tries to make a point about something, you get branded a bigot, right? I talked about the Mortal Kombat thing where I said I was really upset with what they did with Jax because you can't stop slavery by taking away everyone's free will. And I got called a racist because I was opposed to ending slavery. Totally missed the point. Wouldn't listen. I got a ton of, you are a racist because I feel you are a racist. Didn't engage with my point at all. Because people are just trained to go, you're questioning an anti-slavery storyline. You must be a racist. No, I'm pointing out they solve slavery with more slavery. But then I realized that's what Oran was talking about. People go full totalitarian. Slavery's fine as long as it's happening to the other. That's where this ideology actually goes. It's not actually about freedoms, right? And that's why everything's solved by, shunning, dogpiling. I'm in a position right now, it's unnerving because it's actually at a point where I can tell when I talk to certain people, try to be pleasant, let bygones be bygones. I can tell that there are certain gatekeepers in gaming or certain people on the right side of gaming right now who don't even remember what my alleged crime was, right? They just know I'm not in the clique, so they know they have to say shitty things about me and shun me, which doesn't sound like progressivism at all, where I come from. Back in the day when we were doing HIV AIDS awareness stuff and anti-homophobia initiatives and stuff like that, white ribbon stuff after the L'École Polytechnique shooting, we talked about the fact that we need to give people who currently have shitty views an off-ramp, or why should they change their minds? That's what's been lost. And we got to get that back, because otherwise, logically, if you don't give people an off-ramp, why should anybody change their mind? They're just going to double down on the shitty views because that's a better option than admitting you've got shitty views and being branded a terrible person for the rest of your life, right? Right. Moving on. Kevin Oldman said he didn't want to torture the guy in Grand Theft Auto 5. I didn't either. The Trevor torture scene. I really think that scene is a real litmus test of a person, because the realization I had with Grand Theft Auto 5 is that technically there's a dog that's playable in place, and I'm good with Chop the dog, but of the humans, the character I liked the most was Trevor. And Trevor's terrible. When you play a game and the guy who horribly tortures a dude is the character that you like the most, that's a very unpleasant game and not the way I choose to spend my time, right? The thing is, the torture scene in GTA 5 was deliberately awful, right? That's different than a thing like The Last of Us 2, which is what the commenter was responding to. I'm not just going back to beat the dead horse. The game is not aware of how disturbing that scene is and why. One person pointed out to me on Twitter that the thing that bothered them is in the moment that, a black woman's being beaten to death, the focus is on the white woman and her feelings, and the black woman is reduced to an object. And I didn't even really consider that consciously. I'm like, that's the point. I was just so bothered I didn't break the scene down. Away from me thought, right? But good point. And of course, in the Last of Us wiki, it says that Nora provoked Ellie into doing it. Pardon me, what? And you just know that there are people that went to the mat for The Last of Us 2 being this big woke game. They've got BLM in their profiles and, all they're doing all the performative right things, and yet there's that, right? And I realized talking to people this week that my real problem with the game, like there are a lot of like secondary problems, but my core problem with the game, because yeah, you can think of a lot of other games that do shitty things to various characters and still overall you think the game's really good, right? Like Jin and Ghost of Tsushima makes some horribly bad calls and a lot of people die in places. But the problem with The Last of Us 2 is the game didn't just kill Joel. The game killed Ellie's spirit. And they did that so that the action could shift to what really seems to be the embodiment of the creative director's sexual fetish. Like, Ellie is dead inside halfway through that game, and she does not get better. We do not see Ellie actually heal. Ellie kind of just fades into the background, right? It's messed up. Like, Ellie doesn't kill Nora because she was provoked. Ellie kills Nora because Ellie is destroyed inside and a shell of the person she once was. Right? Moving on. I don't have time. One of these days, people keep asking me about why I hate The Sims. Maybe I'll have to do a video on that next week. Just why I hate The Sims. Because it's simple, but hey, if there's time after, because there's one last comment I want to get to. Because this comment like kicked me in the feels. It's fairly short, but Darcy Brennan, whose name I don't recognize, this might be a new commenter, I don't know. But Darcy Brennan says, I started watching the trailer for the game 6 Days in Fallujah, and I turned it off very early in the video. It was leading me to a place that is not good for me. For reference, the events of 6 Days in Fallujah happened within months of me graduating from basic training and advanced individual training in the Army. I was deployed to Iraq on or about the 1-year anniversary. From the brief glimpse I got, this is not a game in the sense that most people think of a video game. The trailer used interviews with the Marines who were there and archival footage. A video game is probably the best way to convey what happened. From what I watched, there is a presence that you would not be able to get from a historical documentary film profiling these events. This seems to be only a view from one side of the coin, and even though it is only one view, this is a game that needs to come to market. Whoever was pushing for censorship does not see the value in showing the public the brutality of war from a first-person perspective. Thank you for allowing me to comment. Now, thank you for allowing me to comment. Oh my God, I just found so endearing. I was charmed by that, I admit. But like, that's a really powerful comment. But I couldn't agree more that I think that some of these really hostile reactions to the game indicate that we need more stuff about what soldiers went through. Like a lot of the objections to this game are in very many ways people reading stuff filling in the blanks of what they saw in the trailer. The game's not out. We can't judge the game. Caveat. But it seems that too many people, especially again on whatever the hard left really is, don't see soldiers as people. And that's a problem. And people said, well, why is this a problem? They're this, they're that. It's like, think about it, okay? And this is, again, strategizing after we come to the moral underpinning, the moral framework of humans are humans. There are not some humans that are human and not some humans that are not human. Humans are humans, right? Moral decision. The strategic thing is we can't ask people to put themselves in these, armed services jobs. We can't ask them to do these jobs. We can't recruit only to mistreat these people and dehumanize them when they get back and expect anyone who isn't a psychopath to take that job, right? So if you want fewer war crimes, stop this. Because the only people who would put themselves in harm's way only to get branded with a scarlet letter for the rest of their life are psychos, are people with, antisocial personality disorder. No one else is going to want to do that job, GI Bill college fund stuff or not, when they know that's what's waiting for them. So, okay, yeah, the U.S. government screwed up the 2000 Iraq War. There's confusion because there was a war. We called it the Persian Gulf War back in the day with the yellow ribbons back in the day. I overused back in the day. Remember, I'm nauseous. But the U.S. government screwing up that war from start to it's not really finished. That's not the fault of the soldiers, right? The soldiers on the ground had no control over the high level decisions, right? They could choose to refuse a direct order. There's consequences for that. But I'm pretty sure, I mean, a few guys, men and women I've talked to, they, like Tammy Duckworth, kind of objected to a lot of the things going on, but none of the orders they were being given were in and of themselves, issues. There's some high profile examples otherwise where, some soldiers did very, very bad things. But the real nasty stuff was farmed out to contractors. Blackwater shit, Blackwater, I think that's what it's called. So, let's bring the humanity back to this stuff. Because ideology at the end of the day is supposed to be about the humans that it helps or hurts. If you lose sight of those humans, your ideology isn't worth shit. It's a collection of computations that get further and further away from what was initially the point. And you're inducing psychopathy when you do that. You are creating a more and more and more amoral calculus, because bringing it back to the beginning, it's all about consequences, right? It's all about saying the right thing or doing the right thing or getting the right result. The number of people who they get really involved in politics and they lose one election and then like, what was it all for? And then God, if we'd quit back in the, and I mean, God, imagine if they'd quit after the first setback in the civil rights fight in the 60s, okay? Imagine if universal suffrage had quit at the first setback. That's not how that works. You're gonna have setbacks. That doesn't mean you're wrong. That doesn't mean it was for nothing. Look at Stacey Abrams. She lost the election, and then she went Obi-Wan Kenobi, more powerful than they could ever imagine. But people don't internalize this. You're gonna lose certain rounds. If you truly believe in something, you go, all right, how are we going to do better next time? God knows that's what I've been doing. But, there's been a lot of anti-transgender people bills passed lately. I don't think, why did I bother? No, that's why I bothered. And you don't support a cause only when it's winning. And I think too many things like this 6 Days in Fallujah petition, people think they have to be on the winning side to prove the morality of their cause. And that's just not how things work, one. Two, it says something about those moral and allegedly logical thought processes of the people expressing that view, right? Because again, these are people who are basing what's right on what they think they're going to get out of it, as opposed to doing the right thing because it's the right thing. All right? I made it through. Now I'm going to take a bit of a break because I feel not good. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Have a good weekend and thanks for watching. Stay healthy.